You're listening to Fox Cities Murder Mayhem, your bi-weekly dose of true crime history in a small rural community of Wisconsin.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Fox Cities Murder Mayhem. I'm Eric.
I'm Gavin.
Gavin, I think we're returning back to our normal area, because wasn't our last episode that we probably recorded was in the UP? So where are we going?
It probably was.
Yeah. So where are we headed to?
I don't even remember what the last episode was, but it probably was the UP episode.
It was.
Okay.
So where are we going now?
We are going to the faraway land of menasha.
Menasha. Yeah. Little bit more in our target demographic than the UP, but
yes.
But I still like the UP more than menasha. So yeah. I just want everybody to know that I think that the UP is far superior to menasha.
I like menasha.
So maybe that's where Gavin's going to move, because Gavin is about to.
I am not moving to menasha.
But he is not moving. He likes menasha. He doesn't like menasha that much.
I'm not going to talk about menasha on the air. I've got some menasha stories, but but anyway, before we even jump in, I'm going to give a little bit of context to this. So, being that I am a local historian, I follow other local history things in the area. And the Menasha Historical Society posted a really brief, couple paragraph story on their Facebook page, and I was not familiar with it. And I told them, I don't know this story. To which they responded, "Aren't you the Fox Cities Murder Mayhem?" So...
Well, it's good to hear that you're known as the Fox Cities Murder and Mayhem guy.
I was very honored they knew who I was. Yeah, that was good. But anyway, so I was like, okay, regardless of how they responded, I was like, well, here's a new story. So I put it together. I then sent Menasha Historical Society my notes. They looked it over. They said, look great. So... I still think there's probably more that can be added to this, but it got the Menasha Historical Society seal of approval.
Yeah.
So I feel pretty good about that.
We're on the top of cusp of, the class of episode we can make, because we've never gotten a historical society to approve an episode before. Maybe we have. I don't know.
I don't know that we have, but honestly, the reason that we don't get approval is because I'm finishing them up the night before. This time I actually had my notes ready like a few days in advance, so I was able to get it out. But yeah, a lot of times like a day or day and a half before, I'm still kind of throwing things in. But anyway, so we're in Menasha. Well, at least we will be. We're not going to start in Menasha, but... this is about Fred Crawford. Fred Crawford was actually born in Canada, the son of Irish immigrants. His father, John Crawford, was a contractor and built the fortresses at Kingston and Junction Canal. Now, when I read that, I was like, what does that mean? And because I don't know Canada. But in fact, if you look up Kingston and Junction Canal, which is, like Eastern Ontario, there are fortresses. Like there's these walls and little forts and things along the rivers that were set up for some kind of defense. Mm-hmm. He did a variety of government work in Canada and a bit in New York, which is, right across the border there. The fortresses were built under the supervision of Alexander Mackenzie, who would later become the Prime Minister of Canada. So, I don't know this, but it's possible today's subject, his father, might have known the Prime Minister of Canada.
Interesting.
Maybe. I don't know. The family moved to Racine, Wisconsin around 1852, and then on to Oshkosh in 1858. They were considered early pioneers of Oshkosh. Apparently 1858 is still considered early pioneers because later on When they were written about, they would be referred to as pioneers of Oshkosh. Fred, our subject, married Jenny Eldridge in 1880 when he was 27 and she was 18. Bit of an age gap, but not probably really unusual.
Probably normal at that point in time.
Yeah. She was the daughter of Ethan Eldridge of Stevens Point. They had 2 daughters, Ivy and Daisy, before divorcing. Jenny would later remarry to a man named Mr. Dawes in Milwaukee. Just Mr. Dawes. Mr. Dawes doesn't have a first name.
But Mr. Dawes is just a cool name, so he doesn't need to have a first name.
She would end up dying young at 37 years old, and her funeral was held at the home of her uncle, Austin Eldridge, who lived at the corner of Sherry Street and Isabella in Neenah. She is buried in Neenah's Oak Hill Cemetery. Now, why do I throw that in there when it doesn't matter? I throw that in there because the corner of Sherry and Isabella is like 2 blocks from where I live. So
I was going to say that sounds very close to Gavin's house. So.
Yeah. So that's I've probably walked by that house many times.
Now all of our listeners can go sit at that intersection and think, I wonder where Gavin lives.
Yeah. Well, I was like, do people need to know where I live? But I do. I live a few blocks from downtown Neenah. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that if somebody really wanted to, it wouldn't be very hard to find your address.
Probably not. Fred, now he's had 2 daughters and he's divorced. So what is he going to do? He's gonna marry again. He marries Dorothy Rogers in August 1893. She's the daughter of Francis Rogers of Rock Island, Illinois. Now, later reports said that she was 20 years his junior, and from the records I could find, that seems about right. That would make him 40 and her 20, which that's an age gap there.
So she's already because she got married at 18, didn't she?
That was the previous one.
Right. So she was only married to that guy for 2 years?
No. She was married for a few years.
Didn't you just say she's 20 now?
No, this is a different woman.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I got confused.
Yeah. No, we don't care about the first wife anymore. Okay. She's dead.
Okay. I gotcha.
He's now on to his second wife, Dorothy, who is, from what I can put together with the math, is about 20 when she's married, and he's about 40. That is, I think, even in the day, probably a bit of an age gap.
Oh, yeah.
They would have 3 children, George, Isabel, and Wilfred. So now Fred has 5 children. Later reports would claim that Fred Crawford ran a wood and coal business in Appleton in the 1880s and 1890s. This later report says that Crawford, quote, was of very irregular habits in his irregularities as manager, which caused his business to fail. He sold out to another company called Johnston and Schlosser, who made the trade quite prosperous. Now, I don't actually think this is correct. I think that these later reports were confusing Fred with his brother, John Crawford. John Crawford was actually very successful in business. He did have a wood and coal business, did pretty well for himself, lived in a very nice house in Oshkosh. He was also the owner of the steamship Evelyn, which went up and down the Fox River between Green Bay and Oshkosh. So John Crawford was pretty well known. Fred Crawford, our subject, not quite as well known. He ran a plumbing business, but it doesn't sound like it was a very successful plumbing business. He would sometimes have shops in Neenah, sometimes shops in Oshkosh. It seems like he was very mobile. Doesn't seem like these were any big businesses. At first, Fred was happy. He had his new young wife. He had some young children. Everything was going right in the world. But then...
I always like the but then.
But then Fred discovered liquor.
Uh-oh.
And he turned violent. Fred would beat Dorothy often, and she was in constant fear of him. The pair separated multiple times, but Fred was always able to get her to come back home with false promises. Oh, Fred.
Such common things that you see right there.
Yeah. Around 1901, the Crawfords moved. They seemed to have moved a couple times. It looked like they were in Green Bay for a bit. They had even might have been in Iron Mountain, Michigan for a bit. They were moving all the time. Around 1901, they moved to a place called Clemensville, which I had to look up. I was not familiar with Clemensville. Clemensville is or was, and I think it's a was, an intersection in Vinland, sort of between Neenah and Oshkosh, which is west of another little town that I didn't know where it was, called Brooks Corners.
Okay.
So, for people not super familiar, between Neenah and Oshkosh, in like the, farmland basically, there are a couple small little areas. Like most of that I would say is Vinland. That's called Vinland.
Okay.
But there was like a tiny little area called Clemensville and a tiny little area called Brooks Corners, which from what I could gather from the old maps were like literally just intersections.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where they went, but I'm guessing they just didn't amount to much.
Yeah.
Once in Clemensville, Fred was using what was called the Keeley cure to try to stay sober. I'll talk about that more in a bit. But it only worked so long. A year later, Fred's drinking became outrageous once more. When he returned home one night drunk, he beat Dorothy so badly she was helpless for several days and could not leave her bed. When she recovered, Dorothy sent their 14 and 10-year-old sons to friends in northern Michigan and left with their 8-year-old daughter to go live with her sister in Menasha. Dorothy took up work as a waitress at the Russell House in Neenah. The Russell House was a hotel.
I'm curious, do you know, because so did this guy just not drink prior to getting married to this woman? That we have he has no issues with alcohol, and then suddenly it just kicks in? Like,
it's hard to say. I mean, it sounds like he didn't have a drinking problem at first, but I find it very hard to believe that he was never drinking.
Yeah, right.
Like, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if he was drinking and that's why he divorced his first wife. I don't know that information, so I can't say.
It seems reasonable, though, because, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but do people pick up drinking habits at, I think you said when he got married to this girl, he's 40?
Yeah, he's 40.
Yeah, that just doesn't seem... I think you've developed a drinking habit by then, right?
I think typically... I mean, obviously, you could just randomly start drinking when you turn 40. I mean, that's
I'm sure it happens, but it's not a common thing.
Right. I don't think so either. And yeah, like I said, my guess is probably he was drinking when he was married the first time. I don't know. I don't have the records of why they got divorced. Only thing I would say as far as that goes is I think we all kind of know divorce wasn't super common.
Yeah.
Like in the 1800s. So the fact that they got divorced at all suggests there was some real problems.
Okay.
Because, yeah, you typically wouldn't do that. I mean, even if he was abusive, unfortunately, I mean, I'm glad this is not how it is anymore, but traditionally, even if your husband's abusive, you don't get divorced. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think there was definitely something more going on. We don't know. Those records probably exist somewhere. It wasn't worth me tracking them down. Mm-hmm. If somebody wants to track them down, I mean, I can.
Or maybe a book involved in it.
Not with me.
No.
Me, but yeah. Okay. So I'd mentioned that Fred was trying to use the Keeley cure to stay sober. I didn't know what that was. I figured other people probably don't know what that is. So I'm like, this is a fun little detour here. The Keeley Institute at one point had over 200 branches throughout the United States and Europe. It was a pretty big deal.
Okay.
And by 1900, the so-called Keeley cure had been given to around 300,000 people.
Holy cow.
What it was was injections of a chemical called bichloride of gold, which I'm not a chemist, but it sounds to me like it's part gold and part chlorine. So if there's any chemists out there, feel free to correct me. New patients were introduced into an open, informal environment where they were first offered as much alcohol as they could drink. The patients were boarded in nearby hotels or at the homes of private residents who were willing to take them in. The Institute operated out of homes and hotels using a spa-like atmosphere of peace and comfort. All patients received injections of bichloride of gold 4 times a day. The treatment would last for 4 weeks. The medical profession continued to criticize the method, and many tried to identify the mysterious ingredients. They didn't know it was bichloride of gold. Like, he wasn't going to tell people what he was doing.
Uh-huh.
And they thought he was injecting them with strychnine, alcohol, apomorphine, willow bark, ammonia, and atropine. I don't know where they came up with this, but these were like, they were theorizing that these were some of the things that they were getting injected with. It was not any of those things. How effective the treatments were, I don't know if we really know. Some people were cured, so it seems like it worked, but who knows? Because at that point, if you're already going in and you say, I want to give up drinking.
There's a certain percentage of people that are going to do that.
Yeah, I think you're already like, some of them are going to succeed no matter what you do to them. So I don't know how effective his cure was. Keeley is sort of celebrated, even though at the time a lot of doctors thought he was nuts. He is kind of celebrated today because he was a pioneer in the fact that he treated people who drank as alcoholics. He didn't treat them as drunks. He taught them as he
viewed it more as a disease.
He viewed it as a disease.
And not just somebody who made the choice to be a blubbering drunk, basically.
Right. At the time, most people thought it was just a personal weakness that people had. And he said, no. I mean, obviously that can happen too. He goes, but there's actually something that causes this. So today, I think we would largely agree with that. I mean, obviously, some people, it's a personal choice. It's not a good personal choice. But I think we widely recognize now that some people are just predisposed to that. So he was kind of ahead of the game on that one. Anyway, so Fred, he's now alone. His wife has left him. She's sent away the children. He opens his mobile plumbing business back up in Oshkosh. He's like, all right, I'm going to focus on my work. I'm going to just do what I can do. But there's trouble brewing. There's trouble brewing. A while back, a man named Jules DeCramer of Green Bay sold a sewing machine to the Crawfords. He was paid half up front with half that was supposed to be paid later. DeCramer sent a letter to Clemensville asking for the other half of his money. They didn't live in Clemensville anymore, so the letter was forwarded on to Menasha, where Mrs. Crawford lived with her sister. Dorothy responded saying her husband took the sewing machine with him. She didn't know where the sewing machine was, but if DeCramer could find her husband, then he could get paid. DeCramer followed up by contacting Menasha's chief of police, Richard Allen, and instructing him to recover the sewing machine or arrest somebody for the theft of the machine. So this is pretty serious now. Somebody owes money on a sewing machine here. Fred would occasionally visit his wife in Menasha. Each time he went and visited her, he would say, please, 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 please come home. But she remained firm. She would not. At this point, she's like, I've tried this a few times. It does not work out well for me. No.
I think I'll just stay here.
Yeah. After a visit in the fall of 1903, Fred was left with the impression that not only was she not going to return home, but probably that divorce papers would be coming soon. Later reports suggest that he was probably right in assuming this.
But based on what you just said, those divorce papers never came, so something else happened before that.
The divorce papers never come.
Yeah.
When he suspected that she was going to file for divorce, he threatened her and said, "I will kill you before I ever accept divorce papers." A couple months later, October 13th, 1903, Fred Crawford was in Menasha to see his wife. Coincidentally, he runs into Police Chief Allen. The two were actually vaguely acquainted with each other because 15 years earlier, Crawford had assisted Allen after the chief, who at that time was not the chief, had been kicked by a horse.
Okay.
So I don't know the story behind that, but apparently the chief, a young chief, was kicked by a horse, and Crawford happened to be around and helped him after being kicked. Chief Allen asked about the sewing machine, and Crawford acknowledged, "Yep, I have the sewing machine." He goes, I'll return it. I'm like, "I'm not doing any sewing. It's fine with me." The two walked to the home of Dorothy's sister, which I believe was at 419 Taco Street. I could be wrong, but that's my best guess based on census records. Found that she was not there, but was actually at the Ambrose Richardson home on the island. The Ambrose Richardson house on the island, when I say the island, it's Doty Island, for people not familiar with the Fox Cities. The Ambrose Richardson home, the current address of which is 501 Keys Street. This is actually a rather historic home.
Mm-hmm.
She was there doing some sewing for that family. The chief made his way towards the post office while Crawford walked towards the Mill Street Bridge, which is the way he suspected his wife would be returning from the island. This was, I did not know this, and I'm going to tell people this because maybe they don't know this either. I'm not super familiar with the history of Menasha. Not really something I spend a lot of time on.
Mm-hmm.
But the Mill Street Bridge, if you're familiar with Menasha at all, you will know it does not exist.
Okay.
There is no bridge on Mill Street. Mill Street is this little tiny stub of a road off of Main Street.
Okay.
It doesn't really go anywhere. And today, if you're going from Menasha to the island, a lot of times you take the Racine Street Bridge. And the Racine Street Bridge is like a drawbridge that you take. It's very nice, except when it's up and then you're stuck at the roundabout. But anyway, so I did not realize that for a good part of Menasha's history, there was no Racine Street Bridge, and there was actually a bridge at Mill Street. Whereas today, Mill Street, like I said, is nothing. It's like maybe a block at most, and it's a very short block, whereas Racine Street would be like one of the main roads.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at old maps of downtown Menasha, it's almost unrecognizable. So anyway.
Does the road on the Nina side still exist that would have merged up into? Do you know?
Good question. I mean, it wouldn't be on the Nina side because half of the island is still Menasha.
Okay. But you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I don't know. But yeah, there's a little stub that comes off of Main Street on the mainland part, and just sort of ends. I don't know. I feel like the other side would be like a parking lot for one of the companies because there's a lot of like mill type stuff on the other side. Which, well, I guess it's called Mill Street, so I mean maybe that makes sense. Yeah. Anyway, so around 7 o'clock that evening, the main street of Menasha is bustling with people. People just coming and going, doing their thing. The Oshkosh Press said there were hundreds of shoppers and citizens going about their business. I quote this because I find it very hard to believe there were hundreds of people walking around downtown Menasha, but sure. I mean, it's 7 o'clock at night. It's October, which means it's already dark at 7 o'clock at night.
Probably, yeah.
And it's 1903. Like, Menasha doesn't have, I mean, it has thousands, but tens of thousands of people. So I have a hard time believing there's hundreds of people walking around doing their shopping in the dark. But I'm just going with what is written down here. Crawford had guessed his wife's route correctly because Dorothy was returning by foot across the Mill Street Bridge. Along with her, she had some property liens that she was going to give to her husband. Don't know the details of those papers, but some kind of things to try to get him, some legal papers to get him to sign. Not the divorce papers. They did walk together for a bit, and another woman named Mrs. Mary Lingenfeld witnessed the Crawford couple confronting each other in front of the steps of the Menasha Library. The library was a fresh, fancy new building. It had just been dedicated in 1898, meaning it was about 5 years old. It is not the same as the library today.
I was going to say, because that location doesn't make sense for what you're talking about.
Yeah, if you look up pictures of the old library, it's absolutely beautiful building. It's like the classic stone columns type building. And the new Menasha Library, the one that existed today, was built in 1969. Also a very nice library, but it doesn't have that classic architecture look to it.
So it was in the same location, though?
It was a few blocks away.
Okay.
Mrs. Lingenfeld could not hear what the Crawford couple was saying, but she could tell that their conversation was animated and that the husband was greatly agitated. She continued to pay attention because this was sort of distracting, seeing these two people argue in front of the library. And that confrontation ended when Fred Crawford shot his wife twice with a revolver, the fatal shot entering her right temple.
So, I think it's funny that, I mean, I guess a shooting is never funny, but it's really ironic that he's hanging out with the police chief all day, and this is how the day ends.
Yep.
He goes and shoots his wife.
Yeah.
So, like, did the police chief just had left it to go do something else?
He walked off to go to the... He's like 2 blocks away right now. A passerby, a man named Louis Jordan, who was an insurance agent, stopped by. There's 2 versions of what happens next. One version says that Louis Jordan was hit by a stray bullet, while another version says that he approached Fred Crawford just to see, hey, what's going on? And Fred Crawford said, hey, this is a private conversation. Go away. But either way, Louis Jordan ends up getting shot as well. Not fatally. He's not terribly injured, but he is shot. Louis Jordan, in addition to being an insurance agent, was connected with the Menasha woolen mills. For a number of years, he'd had his insurance and real estate business. He was an organizer of the Lakeside Paper Company. He was a very successful man. So today, do people know who Louis Jordan is? Probably not. But in the day, like, this wasn't just some random guy bragging by. This is someone who people would have known who he was. Mm-hmm. After he shoots his wife and either purposely or accidentally, depending, shoots Louis Jordan, Fred Crawford walked around to the other side of the library and then shot himself the same as he shot his wife, in the right temple. His death was instant. As the newspapers so kindly put it, he blew out his own brains.
Wow. Tactful.
Yeah, that's how they used to write. One of the first people to arrive on the scene was Chief Allen, because he wasn't very far away. Louis Jordan was found unconscious, but was treated for a bullet wound by a local doctor. The shot grazed his rib on his left side, but like I said, wasn't fatal, wasn't even apparently that bad, because after the doctor looked at him, woke him up, said, "You're going to be okay." He goes, "Just don't let blood poisoning set in." And then he let Louis Jordan walk home. Which, You got to appreciate that. You get shot, you pass out, and they're like, "You're good.
You're good. Just go home.
Walk it off." The event was said to be the most exciting thing to happen to Nina or Menasha in many years, and within half an hour...
The most exciting thing?
Yeah. Within a half an hour, again, I'm quoting the newspaper, within a half an hour, 5,000 people packed into the square in front of the library. I find this extremely hard to believe.
At this point in time, is that more people than actually live in Menasha?
I didn't write down what the population of Menasha was, but
it's gotta be close, right?
Like, I don't even know if this is possible for 5,000 people because, one, yeah, the population is relatively low at the time, but two, like, this is 1903. Like, most people probably don't have telephones. Most people don't have automobiles. Like, where are they coming from?
I'm sure that it's just back in those days, like, that was more of an animated way of writing things, where if there was a large group of people, you said thousands of people when it was only really 50.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I've said this many times on many different podcasts, but it's worth repeating. When you're writing history, find sources, and if you can't find like a first-hand source, like an actual record, like, quote your source. And it's because of things like this. Because if somebody were to write a book on this, which you wouldn't, this isn't really, you can't make a book out of this story. But if you were, and you just wrote 5,000 people, but you didn't put it in quotes or say where you got it from, now you've like established it as like a historical fact, which I'm pretty confident it's not. But that's the thing. So many things in the newspapers and early books were written in such a way.
It was like an animated way, or like
the facts were like, there's a saying. I don't personally believe this saying, but there's a saying. Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. And I feel like a lot of newspapers went along with that idea.
And I'm sure back then it was perfectly acceptable. Like,
oh yeah,
like people probably read that article and were like, it wasn't thousands of people, but they get the gist that there was a lot lot there.
No, it was common practice for sure. But that's the thing. Like, the person reading it at the time would know. They'd be like, oh yeah, there wasn't 5,000 people. But when you read it today and you're used to the way that newspapers are supposed to be very precise in their information, you'll read the old newspapers, and if you don't realize that, you'll be like, oh. And like, no, don't take everything they say as like exactly right. Like, it's not how this works. The coroner transported the Crawford bodies, the husband and wife, to his funeral parlor for further examination. A coroner's jury was assembled. I wrote down their names. They'll be on the website, but they're not any names that stand out to me. So the determination was pretty obvious. They said this was a murder-suicide. Fred Crawford was sent to Oshkosh for burial, while Dorothy was sent to the home of her sister in Menasha. And I'm not sure where she ended up, but she is not alongside her husband in Oshkosh. I will tell you that. I looked into the children because, I'm like, well, you got 2 dead parents now. What happens to the children?
And they had 3 kids, right?
They had 3, plus he had 2 from his previous marriage. So his eldest child, Ivy, married a man in Illinois. They had at least 1 child. Where they ended up, I don't know, but somewhere in Illinois, apparently. His second child, Daisy, was raised by her uncle, Austin Eldridge, in rural Oshkosh. She died in April 1905 and is buried in Neenah. She was about 21 when she died. Wow. I don't know what she died of, but something natural. It wasn't
anything suspicious.
Wasn't anything suspicious. Son George Crawford moved to Chicago, worked as an auditor for Price Waterhouse. In Chicago, he married a woman, then returned to Wisconsin, where he operated taverns in Presque Isle, Stevens Point, and Anago. He became an assessor for a town that I've never heard of. He passed away in Anago in 1983. Isabella Crawford was raised by her aunt, the one in Menasha. Census records show her under the name Isabella Elliott, which would be her aunt's last name. I don't know if this was an error by the census taker, or if she actually did get formally adopted and changed her name. After childhood, I don't know where she went, so couldn't track her down. And then youngest son, Wilfred Crawford, was pretty mobile. He got married in Philadelphia, had 2 daughters of his own. He ended up getting divorced, and then he raised his 2 daughters in Detroit, which I thought was unusual that he got divorced. Then he got the 2 girls, but that's apparently what happened. So I just wanted to throw the kids in there because I thought I just quickly skimmed that over. There's a little bit more on there if people want to look that up. But I thought this is sort of an interesting thing to see what happens, because that is the real human part of this story, right? Husband kills his wife and then kills himself. Tragedy, obviously, but they're both dead. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the end of the story for them. But the ones who are really going to have to deal with it are now you got these children. And the first 2, I think, by the time this happens, are already
pretty well on their own.
Yeah, they're at least in their teenage years at this point. So they're okay. But they're still all relatively young. And that's, how do you adapt to that? And it seems like for the most part they did. I thought for sure I was going to find one of them, but it was just absolutely just a nightmare life story. But it seems like they had a pretty good support network with their mother's family. So
isn't that amazing that you would not expect that? You would expect one of them to have a rough time, but that's good. One thing I find crazy about this story, and this could just equate that he is actually, for some reason at 40, he decided to pick up alcohol.
Sure.
Because his first divorce goes through no problem. As far as we know nothing about, it seems like they just separate and that's it. But then the second divorce, he decides, if you're going to divorce me, I'm going to kill you. That's quite a dramatic shift. And
it is. I will say this to that. The first divorce, we don't really know much about. It probably had a mention in the newspaper. I didn't really see anything. The court record would have more, but it didn't really get covered a lot. The reason we know so much about the second one is because of what happened, after the fact. Because then the newspapers are talking to people and they tracked down an attorney she was working with, and he mentioned to them, she had been discussing divorce papers. So if she had said, I'm going to divorce you, and he says, I'll kill you if you try to divorce me, and then she divorces him,
and he doesn't kill her, never would have made the papers. Exactly.
So,
you're right.
So we don't know if he reacted. Obviously, he reacted more strongly because he shot her, but emotionally more than he did the first time. I don't know that.
And the other thing I find funny about this story is that literally you kind of just leave the chief of police to go do something.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah, you hang out with the chief of police,
and then you go shoot
You leave for a half hour. You're like, you go into the post office. I'm going to go shoot my wife.
yeah. I mean, and that sounds terrible to say, but that just doesn't seem like something you would do. You got to imagine this was not premeditated, but then again, at the same time, he also did have a gun with him.
Yeah.
So, but maybe that's common back then?
I don't know. I thought about that a little bit, and it definitely seems like it was an option that he was considering. People do carry guns on them. That happens. But I don't know if it's super common.
Right.
So the fact that he had it on, it definitely seems to me like he was leaving that open as a way out.
Right.
So I don't know if he went in with that as the day's plan, but it definitely at some point that plan or that backup plan became his choice. So.
Right, and I just go back in my head to thinking like I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about shooting my wife. I think at some point I hesitate and say, I know that the police chief is probably 15 minutes from this location right now. I should probably not do this, you know?
Well, right. I mean, he then took the way out of that to get out of trouble, but which I don't know if that was part of his plan.
Yeah.
I don't know how much he thought this, you know, these things we don't know, like they're dead. We have no idea. There's no, you can't talk to them. There's no trial. We don't know. So it's like, I don't know if that was his plan, that he's like, if you try to divorce me, I'm going to kill you. And then he doesn't say it out loud, but in the back of his head, he's like, I'll kill myself too. Mm-hmm. I don't know. And, you know, and these are emotional things. Like, maybe with an hour beforehand, he didn't think it was going to go this way. Yeah. I don't know.
And maybe just something that was said in their conversation just triggered him to do the unthinkable.
Right.
You know?
So, yeah, I don't know. I definitely think there's more information out there. If people want to do their own digging and find stuff, I encourage them to do so. If they want to share it with us, I encourage them to do so. I will probably not be looking into this one more because I'm always moving on to the next story. Mm-hmm. But I feel like this is a pretty open and shut case, like as far as what happens. There's not a lot of loose ends here, but there's always more context. And to me, it's sort of like the context that I think really adds to it.
Right, and I think if you get a good back history of like that first marriage, if you were able to pull that out, that's going to make this 10x better story.
Yeah, now
you know, like it all depends what you find out when you do that research. Like if they were happily married and then, I don't know, she cheated on him and they divorced.
That's a possibility.
It is a possibility. My gut tells me that's probably not what happened.
I don't think that's what happened either, but I don't have any evidence one way or the other.
But the point is that if it goes the way I suspect it would go, I think it would make it a much more interesting story because I'm going to imagine that a lot of what happened in the second marriage happened in the first marriage.
Yeah. Yeah, if people want to look into that. So I'm going off of the idea here that he was bouncing around Nina and Oshkosh. The divorce most likely happened. I don't know where it happened, but it most likely happened in Winnebago County, which means that divorce record would be currently held by UW Oshkosh.
Okay.
So if somebody wants to take that step, like I'll tell you exactly where you can go to look this up. That record will probably exist. If Winnebago County's records are as good as Outagamie County's records, it'll exist because Outagamie County's court records are still on file going back to 1851.
Wow.
So, and some of Brown County's are on file going back to 1820. So, like, these things don't go away.
And the good thing is that if it's held by the university, I feel like that makes it easier to get your hands on it. Would that be
it's
a
fully
true
public?
State?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, like sometimes when you go to police departments, they're like they come up with a reason not to give you a record or something like that.
Oh, I mean, this kind of thing, the police wouldn't say no.
Right.
But yes.
But some government institution could say, no, we're not going to give that because that's for whatever reason. But I think the university would be like, yeah, go ahead, take it.
No, if you file an open records request, there's any number of reasons it can be denied or that things can be blocked out of the record. Absolutely. But no, like in this case, I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent here since we're like wrapping up, but so there's the Wisconsin Historical Society. Mm-hmm. They've got branches throughout the state that are called the Area Resource Centers, or maybe Area Research Centers. Either way, ARCs. And they're at Green Bay, Oshkosh, Milwaukee. I think Eau Claire has one. And they're kind of divided up regionally. So records from the region around Oshkosh, which would probably include things like Fond du Lac County, maybe Green Lake County, I'm not sure, but definitely Winnebago County, would be in the state historical archives that are housed at UW Oshkosh. Mm-hmm. So yeah, long story to get to my point here is that it's not an open records request. Like, it's literally like a library.
Okay. You just walk in and basically check out whatever you want.
Well, you don't check out, like, because you got to request it. Like, these things are all in a back room in storage boxes. But if you go in and you tell the person on duty, hey, I'm looking for this, they know how to find that thing. Like, it might take them 5 minutes, but they'll know exactly where it is.
Interesting. Well,
so
I'm
not super familiar with the Oshkosh one. I spent a good deal of time in the Green Bay one, and yeah, they're just happy to help researchers. They'll set you up at a table. They'll bring the stuff out. You sign out on it because these are like you can't replace these documents. So if you damage them, you're in some trouble. But as long as you don't damage them, you can look at whatever you want. So yeah,
super cool. And I wish I had the time to do that. But I don't. So if we do have a listener that has the time to do it, I would encourage you to do it. And I'd love to hear what you find. Yeah. Because it would just be interesting to see the other divorce story, just to see, like, was this a regular thing, or I think it would make more sense of the story, basically. So
I agree. I agree 100%. I think how the first marriage fell apart, no matter how it did, whether it was abuse and alcoholism or not, I think would add a lot to understanding what happened the second time. Yeah, because I know some people grow and change, but for the most part, I think, like, if you run into relationship problems one time, you're probably gonna run into them again, because, like, people are who they are.
Yeah, well, and you hear about somebody, like in this story, it just is weird to me that the first time it seems like, oh yeah, they just got a divorce and went their separate ways, and then the second time the guy's like, yeah, I'm gonna kill you. That seems like a transition that is not normal to me. But you do, like you said, it could be that he picked up the alcohol, and the alcohol had a big part to do with that as well. It could just be, it could also be a time thing. Yeah. Because, how disgraced was this guy when he got a divorce? And the idea of getting another divorce was just not a game of cards, because he wasn't going to be disgraced like that again.
True, yeah. So, I don't know. Yeah, somebody, find that information and let us know. Yeah. I'm not going to do it. So,
so with that, do you have a sneak peek into the next episode, or are you still working as far as what's coming?
I know what it is.
Okay. You want to give a little?
Yeah. So I don't know when this episode, the current one we're recording, drops. But in October, I'm doing a presentation. And so that presentation is going to be the next podcast episode. And it's so it's Outagamie County corruption.
Awesome.
It's about the Prohibition era and the sheriff of Outagamie County during Prohibition, him not doing things the right way. And I don't just mean like looking the other way with people like making
like was
alcohol.
He running his own liquor business?
People will have to tune in next time. But like I said, it's a little bit like a lot of law enforcement agencies looked the other way when people were making booze and Prohibition, especially in Wisconsin, because it's part of the culture here. But this was more than that. This guy was definitely not operating as a sheriff the way you're supposed to be a sheriff.
Well, that is one to look forward to. So that'll be an awesome episode. Do you got anything else, Gavin, or are we ready to wrap this one up?
That's all I got. Like I said, this episode was pretty straightforward.
Yeah, we just need somebody to do that research so we can learn about this other marriage. But yeah. So with that, we'll wrap this episode up, and we will be back in 2 weeks with another episode. We want to thank everybody for their continued support of this podcast. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Fox Cities Murder and Mayhem. Join us in 2 weeks for another exciting episode of murder and mayhem.